Hi, this is Missiles, Mayhem, and Explosions, the effects work on Twisted Metal Season 2. Disclaimer, we know this is the last talk of the day, and we thought we would just show you pretty pictures. It's probably the only presentation today without any screenshot of node networks, but it'll be fun. All right, I'm LP, head of CG for Folks' studio across the America.
And I'm Jonathan, FX Supervisor at Folks Montreal.
And we work at Folks, a VFX studio where we help filmmakers around the world to tell their stories. Folks is part of Pitch Black, a global house of creative brands with a history in film, television, and streaming. So you can see we have a global presence with our 10 locations at Folks, and we collaborate with our sister companies like El Ranchito, Rising Sun Pictures, and Square One. In total, we have 15 different locations. And today we'll talk about Twisted Metal Season 2, and most specifically about two main story beats in that season, at least one that we worked on. The first one is the qualifying round over episode 205 and 206, and then the second one is the final round of Twisted Metal for episode 211. But what is Twisted Metal? This is the TV series adaptation of the video game series that started in the 90s on PlayStation 1. The first season was released 2 years ago in July 2023, and the second season was released just last month in August 2025. Let's have a look at a reel showcasing our work on Season 2. It really feels good to see all those shots stitched one next to another. It's good. So here we can see what our internal VFX supervisor described, how he described the project. So there was a lot to do: muzzle flashes, sparks, tracer fire, explosions, crowds, and set extension. And our goal was to create a fast-paced, over-the-top feel that's true to the game's tone. I like stats, so let's break out a little bit of our work on the season. So we worked on around 500 shots over 6 out of 12 episodes for the season. We had a total of 210 people working on the show, and we peaked at around 100, maybe 94, 6 of which were effects artists that work on what we are showcasing today. The project timeline, we had roughly 10 months over 2024 and 2025, and disk space was definitely a challenge throughout. We tried to keep just the FX caches under 300 terabyte, and yeah, IT was really really insistent on reducing our footprint, especially over the last 3 months. I don't have the real number of how much we wrote at the end, but at any given moment, we try to keep it under 300 terabytes. Another fun fact, Folks was first contacted through its general email address, info@folksvfx.com for this project, which is unusual. But yeah, it worked out, and I think we started a great relationship with the client, and we gained their trust as we got more and more work as we progressed over the season. So this here is the first story beat that we'll be covering today, the qualifying round. So it's around 45% of the shots we worked on for that season. And here, story-wise, the antagonist is tasking the contestant to each deliver a package to Tournament City. They have to take the package and simply drive to the other side of what seemed an endless and very dangerous landing strip. The shots are full of missiles and explosions, and why do we love this story beat so much? It just shows how there are so many ways that things can go boom.
Okay, let's see what we were up against for that first sequence. We knew we had 22 shots to do with missiles. I'll focus on missiles mostly. Every shot had a different amount of missiles, of course. Every missile at a different speed, at a different starting and end point, if any. Every missile could be can be one of two types of missile, the classic white smoke missiles or the laughing ghost missile, which is a mix of purple and white and has some additional sparks. Some missiles explode on impact with additional CG, and some other ones, we need to time them with explosions that were directly on set. And of course, we need to make sure that we can access every single missile or explosion for additional notes by the client.
To keep everything to scale, we started with satellite images for tracking and layout. By the way, this is the decommissioned Downsview Airport here in Toronto, and most of the plays that we worked on were shot here in town. To continue with our care for correct scaling, we ingested model scans from the client, we rigged them, and you can assume that for each shot you'll see, the vehicles were tracked for correct size, speed, and motion.
Okay, how to approach a sequence like this with so many missiles? Of course, we needed a very close relationship with the animation department. We were very dependent on the type of data that they would give us. So after a lot of talking at the beginning of production, we asked them to give us 3 locators for each missile. So the missile itself, the start point, and the end point. To automate the scene building and update, we constructed a top network that would scan for each specific shot, it would scan all the animation folders and versions and make sure we had the most up-to-date versions, and to flag us if there were some missing missiles or missiles that had to be deleted. By comparing the different locator position, we knew when to start and stop emitting smoke. For anybody who has done missile trails in the past, you know that the bounding box can become very big very fast. So we decided to cut them into wedges, to cut the emission into wedges. You can see in the video different colors or bounding boxes for each one of them. The number of wedges needed for each missile is calculated automatically from the missile animation. To prevent visible junctions between the wedges, we did some emission ramps up and down at the beginning and end of emission time. And because of the high velocity of the exhaust, a lot of sub-steps were needed during emission time. I think it was around 20, but as soon as the emission is finished, we could lower that to maybe 2 sub-steps just for the remaining smoke until the end of the shot. As I said earlier, we must keep control on individual missiles in case there are specific nodes. To do this, each missile and explosion has its own unique SIM setup. The same idea is goes for explosions, of course. The trigger time for explosion is dictated by the endpoint from the first locator we receive. It's a bit artisanal, but it works, and it informed a lot on how to develop the multi-shot HD that we will use on the subsequent shows. When we had to develop the explosion, we had to match what the client shot live on set. The explosion that they did was mostly a fireball with no debris and no residual smoke, so they wanted these elements, so we had to make sure we stayed close to what they did while adding shockwaves and trails and stuff like this.
Okay, this one I like just because it shows the diversity of explosions we worked on for this project.
And the first two shots of that very small sequence, the challenge, you can probably guess it, is the speed of the car. We had to play around with it a lot to cheat it, because the smoke would just leave frame super quick and we would not see anything. And of course, that brings us to the usual motion blur problems. So sparks on fast-moving objects become very long lines as usual. So we had to cheat that to make sure we had something maybe not that realistic, but more interesting to see. And for the last shot with the flare exploding in the sky, well, a flare during daylight is not very interesting. So we added some dark smoke and brighter flares to make it pop a bit more on the white sky.
Again, here we have another type of explosion. This is a grenade exploding in front of a moving car. The key challenge here was the retime applied to the plate. We usually track the plate at its original frame rate, and then we apply the retime curve published by the comm department, and then we re-export animation caches from there. But it still resulted in a steppy cache this time.
Yes, the steppiness comes from the varying retime that they did. So it's not a linear retime, there's a curve in it. Because of that, the model we received from animation was stepping. So there were some frames where it was, twice at the same place, then jumping forward. So this gave us some very funky velocities. To go around that problem, I created a very small solver just to re-smooth everything and to make sure that it follows the correct path and the correct speed. I did my simulation for the explosion, for the trail, and then I backtracked and removed some smoothness to bring it back to the plate, the original plate.
And it shows how it's important to massage data coming from upstream departments. Sometimes you want to go and start the explosion right away, but here, improving on the data that we received was really key. But this qualifying round has 4 shots with what we call the heavenly missiles. So another story recap, the package they had to deliver on the other side of that landing strip, there was one trick, one catch. Each package had 3 health points. If it was hit by another contestant, then it would lose 1 point. And if depleted, well, it would cause the elimination of that contestant by an airstrike. So that airstrike, we called it the heavenly missile.
So what you see right now is the explosion on the right is the plate element that they did on set. We were very, very lucky. I was very excited to work with such good quality plates. I did not have to do anything on that specific shot, but I used it to start my setup because I have a perfect reference to match. It was very fun, couple iterations to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, it's the best reference, but also it's also a challenge to match, right? And I remember seeing a new iteration of this shot flip booking on Jonathan's computer every time we would go for lunch for a couple of weeks. Always the same shot flip booking, always a little bit different, trying to match the look from the plate.
Once we were happy with that explosion, I jumped on the actual plate, on the actual shot I had to populate with that explosion. You can see at the first iteration that the resulting explosion is somewhat small and underwhelming. So when the supervisor and the client saw that, they said, no, bigger, bigger. So, okay, bigger. So you can see the evolution of the explosion through time, with the explosion getting bigger and bigger and more impressive. As with any explosion, mastering emission parameters is the key. I really enjoy using the pyro burst node from Houdini directly to do that. I think it's perfect, very easy to use. It suits perfectly. I used it to add some additional color to the smoke. It doesn't show that much in the final result, but I injected colored smoke from the beginning, and we wanted to have some very dark smoke around the flames. So directly in my dot network, I studied the flame field at every frame, and every time the flame field would decrease, I would turn the surrounding voxels pure black or almost pure black. So it gives us a very contrasty explosion. Finally, to optimize the sim times, I animated the padding around the explosion. So in the first few frames where there's a lot of expansion, usually the explosion takes so much space so fast that it expands into the bounding box. So I had very big, like 3 meters padding. And then after a few frames, I just animated down. So I'm back to 0.3. So I save a lot of voxels and sim time that way. Same thing for during expansion, I animated the turbulence to very high levels just for a few frames to break the big bubbles that have a tendency to appear during high divergence. And then the rest has very low turbulence, as the explosion itself has a very great look.
And all of that to create an epic explosion. For me, what really sells it is the flying car like this, and I think this breakdown shows it very well. But it's something that came through iteration, and yeah, Jonathan was kind enough to add that. It's a little touch here.
There was 2 more shots with the heavenly missiles that we had to work on. It's basically a close-up of what's going on when the heavenly missiles falls on a car. We had, of course, to enhance the explosion and to remove the stunt rig that we see on the first shot. A challenging aspect of this 2-shot sequence is that they are back-to-back in the edit. So I had to make sure that both shots were consistent one with the other. Even though I received very good roto animations, it was not possible to reuse the same animation in both because of camera placement. I had to rebuild everything. And in the second shot, the client wanted the smoke and the fire to clear the air by the end of shot, which was a bit tricky, but it works. Those were very heavy simulation simply because they're close to camera and they fill the space completely almost. So long sim times and long renders as well.
And it's good to work with plates like this. Like they really pull up the cars. It's real, and we're there to enhance and tell the story. Okay, this wraps up our first beat for season 2. Now let's have a look at the other major beat that we wanted to talk about, this one for episode 11. So in this final round of the tournament, contestants battled in a death match to ensure in an arena filled with spectators from both insiders and outsiders. So 2 groups here. So we worked on missiles, trails, explosions, set extensions, and crowds. But why we love this sequence so much is just pure mayhem. So this is the same set of satellite pictures we showed earlier. Here it's overlaid with the set scan that we got from the client, and we used it as a reference to build the destructible environment. Here we have a few of our assets. Artists at Folks can use many different applications to build assets, but in the end, the environments are assembled in Houdini. This project was our first time that we were using a set of HDAs to assemble our environments in Houdini, made by Elrunchto, our sister company we share a pipeline with. We can see some of our crowd characters here. The bottom image shows how we're making many different looking agents from a few base characters. We usually start from a male and female base character, and then we derive look variants by driving shaders with attributes on our crowd agents. Of course, in this instance, we ended up having way more than just a base male and female character, but really it's variants from those shaders that really sells the crowd. And even if it has been 6 years that we've been using the Houdini crowd toolset at FOS, there are always very amusing versions like this that we present in dailies. Always fun. And this second story beat concludes with 2 unexpected shots. So our antagonist blows up the insider spectator stand, killing the audience. Why do we love this shot so much? Well, what there's not to love about it.
So this was the biggest challenge of the season. We had to do a massive explosion that goes through metal structures constructed on top of metal containers. So we had to bend metal to break everything. There were two shots that go back to back, a close-up shot and then a very wide shot that's about 250 frames long, so somewhat long and difficult to simulate. Then we had to add a lot of extra layers and details to add scale to everything, tires and metal pieces. We were only 2 artists working on that. There was me and my colleague Charles Gariepi. And at the end, Charles was taking care of the crowd, and he had to make them cheer and then burn as ragdolls.
Sure.
Here you can see one of my very first complete tests, which was used to start populate the shot and to see the timings and location of the bombs. I did a very, very quick crumbling stadium just to get the velocities and to feel everything together. We decided to work both shots in one IP files to be able to work on continuity and on timings easier. My colleague Charles was in charge of RBD simulations and crowds. So the first thing that we decided to nail was the RBD simulations, because those RBD simulations would dictate how the crowd and how the fire would react. And any change in the RBD simulation would trigger all the other elements to be resimulated later. So it was a long process. One of the challenges Charles faced was steering and bending the metal containers. The RBD subs were very, very helpful for that task, for automating the creation of constraints. It's very well done, guys. The shot is somewhat long. Maybe the second shot is somewhat long, maybe 250 frames. And at the beginning, our simulation, everything was crumbling very fast, and the shot was almost boring at the end. So we decided to delay the fall of the 2 towers. So those 2 towers were first hand animated by Charles, as you can see in that part of the video. So the second tower from the left is hand animated and is used as a guided RBD for the low-res simulation. And the low-res simulation is used as a guide for the high-res simulation that we can see on the right.
So you can see the commitment of the VFX artist who actually animated something with keyframes. That shows commitment.
Yes. It was hard, but he did it. This is a close-up view of the crowd. The movement of the crowd agents was done by the animators themselves, who mocap themselves in our ad hoc mocap studio, and then they just reuse that for populating the whole crowd. Once we were satisfied with our crowd, it was time to blow them away. So the crowd agents would switch to ragdolls using a custom attribute calculated from the RBD and text. Again, the ragdolls create the best bloopers. They then react to the low-res RBD sims and to the bombs from FX.
And at this distance, the ragdoll simulation didn't have to be perfect. So it's why it's nice to do a close-up here and to see how we could get away with this sort of quality at the distance. Anyway, the focus is on the explosion at that point.
In the end, to ensure perfect continuity between the two shots, a single RBD sim was used for both of them. A single crowd sim was used for both of them as well. But I had to create two separate pyro explosions because they were too different. The timings were somewhat different, and the resolution, of course. At the end, I think that the first explosion is maybe 32 frames long, while the longer one is 250, and they took the same time to simulate on the farm because of the change of resolution. The explosion uses the RBD and the crowd as colliders and as additional source as well to add more life to the explosion, so we can see burning people flying away. This was a special request by the client. They really wanted to see flying corpses being projected towards camera. So somebody in Asset had fun creating those body pieces. We don't really see them in the final video because there's too much going on, but it's there. So the client is happy. This is a little stack up of all the elements that were used to create the shot. There's a lot of additional elements, and on top of the main explosion and crowd and RBD, there's dust on the metal structures, on the containers. There's part of the structures that were duplicated and hand projected towards the battle arena to add more mayhem. There were some car pieces and concrete flying around as well. There's a shockwave on the ground. At the end, in total, I had 31 pyro simulations that I combined into 6 massive VDBs for rendering. Otherwise, it was impossible to render. There was too much data. And this is the end result of both shots shown together. If you look very closely, there's stuff going past the camera. These are body parts. And you can see the falling towers at the end. The last frame was used as a source for additional simulation that were used in the subsequent shots and in the other episodes to create some remaining lingering smoke and fires and stuff like that. And yeah,
this concludes our work on the second story beat. Thank you, and congrats to all those who worked on the series at Folks and at other VFX facilities. And as they say, that's all, folks.
So cool. Any questions? That's on me down.
Quick question. At the beginning, you said that you had to chunk missile training pieces.
Yes.
Is there a reason why you chunk it, and instead you didn't use the sparse spirals?
No, I don't have a specific reason why I did this. I did that method a bit naturally because that's the way I work, I think.
I was curious because sometimes you get like a different output from it. So I was thinking that you tried it and then didn't get you there, and then you had to chunk it.
I should try it.
But you can also benefit from multiple computers processing your sim on the farm. I think we were really looking to get iteration every day. So this was one way, but then the compromise is that you have those transition points that are harder to tweak, but he always manages. So
I mean, but it looks amazing. So it worked.
Thank you. I did not specify during the presentation, but it was somewhat difficult to make sure that the junction point between each wedge is not too dense or not dense enough. Otherwise, when you backlit it, you see it right now, or on the shadows on the ground, you see dark spots, all over the place. So it took a bit of fiddling around, but it works.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Scanning, scanning. Going once, going twice. Yeah. Amazing presentation, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.